All right, welcome to another episode of the Critical Introverts podcast. I am your host, Senor Filth, and my co-host, Benevolent Asshole, and we have returning guest, A.K. Spencer, and we have a new guest by the name of, I guess, how would you go? I know you by the Instagram handle. Was it quasi-libertarian, quasi-hippie libertarian?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's an Instagram libertarian. Kind of found her because I liked her post, and here she is. So I guess the topic for today is we're going to try to sort of explain, describe, define, whatever you want to call it, what woke means. And this sort of came about the other day. I've been on a AI art tip for a while, just looking at it, just interested in it. And I saw some post, and the artist, they made some caption about like news reporters making up or, exaggerating wokeism and making it this doomsday thing. And the comments, I saw someone say like, can conservatives even define what woke is? And made me think like, I'm not sure if I can even really describe it. So I figured let's get a couple people to try to see if we can come to some way to explain it to regular people, because I think this is something that like in the realm of debate, like people should be able to define it at least vaguely enough so that the conversation has some meat to it, I guess. All right, so I guess anyone just want to jump in as far as like a vague kind of, I guess, how would you be able to like spot what woke is when you see it? If anyone wants to sort of just jump in.
Blue hair. Just joking.
Well, it seems that people are taking their social cues from the media,
Mhm.
from government, so they're not actually thinking about how to. They claim that it's empathy,
Mhm.
but they're actually taking all those social cues from like the media, pop culture, the government. So they're not actually taking the time to actually ask the questions and go and do their research.
Mhm.
So yeah, to me, like what I was saying like beforehand is. Um, Political activism subsidized through the government, pop culture, and the media. Because
Mhm.
the reason people are so proud and so confident in saying or participating in the political activism online and in person, out like in protest, is because they have big pharma, they have all these corporations, there's like trans people on beers, they have all the support, so they don't really actually have to
Yeah.
think about it. So in my opinion, that's what woke is. It's just kind of going along with not actually having empathy, but just not questioning it. It just
Yeah.
blindly
It's
following big pharma and
yeah.
big government.
It's like fake empathy though.
Exactly,
It's
like pseudo empathy. Yeah.
yeah, and I find it funny. Like I follow a lot of like super far left artists because just to sort of see how far the left is going, and a lot of them, like as you say, like they're so pro establishment, but they have this weird like you know idea that they're somehow like against the grain, which is so hilarious to me. Uh, like when was it? There was something that happened with Biden. Of course, there's always something that happened with Biden, but like this person immediately, I think it was something about like when there's something about the Hunter Biden proof that they were getting money like a week or two ago, and the person just said they immediately posted it, like shifted it to Trump, and like had this Biden is so awesome kind of message in their art, and I was just like, what makes you think that you're like against anything
Yeah.
when you're so pro Biden? Like, if you're like the punk rock type of person who hates like corporate anything, like Biden, that is the most corporate candidate that I've ever seen in my life. I mean, you can make an argument for Hillary, but I just don't understand like how anyone can think they're punk rock.
Because they're not concerned. They're not concerned with class anymore, so that's why they have nothing. They're like a new mutation or pure mutation of the left.
Mm-hmm.
But people like when I was a leftist, it was pretty early on. It was leftists that were saying, "What's going on with these kids trying to silence free speech?"
Mm-hmm.
So it happened in such a short period of time where they kind of turned their back on even traditional left ideas, freedom of speech, but also class. So it was like all overnight where they don't see it. This seems to me, at least, this is what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
Overnight, they don't have a problem with the establishment, because exactly what you were saying, benevolent asshole, the establishment is supporting them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
they don't have a problem with establishment. They don't have a problem with big capitalism, like big
Mm-hmm.
corporations, censorship, and they don't care at all about class. They care about race and gender and things like that to an irrational degree, I think. But,
Do you think it's like somehow how would I put it, like kind of inevitable that stuff like that happens? Like if Alex Jones became mainstream, like he was on Billboard, you know, whatever, like, and his followers, you know, like their stuff, you don't think that would happen?
the reason I don't think it happens, I think that this is I think that's part of it's generational, and part of it is a combination of a generation with. It would never happen to Gen X, but we also didn't. We weren't influenced from an early age by social media, so it might be inevitable now. But the fact that they stopped, Alex Jones was one of the first people that they tested censorship on. You know,
Yeah.
It's like, can we get away with it? They got away with it.
Yeah.
But I don't think that there's anything like this is inevitable. But then again, I would somewhat backtrack, because the definition I kind of gave before the show, which I think you thought was a bit hyperbole.
I mean, we can get into that later, but yeah.
But Nietzsche made kinds of predictions along those lines. That he said that they were inevitable, effectively.
Yeah.
Well, it also seems like society is becoming like weaker too. Like the more of a degenerate you become. I don't know if you guys heard of Fat Mike from like No Effects. Like recently, like they're breaking up, I think, and they had like their last show in San Diego. But Fat Mike was being interviewed by somebody just recently, and he was crying about somebody. I don't know the name of the girl, but it's the girl from Paramore, the singer, because she called him out about something he said years ago. I don't know what it was that he said, but he said something allegedly homophobic, and he was like trying like his best to like apologize. I tried to go to Denny's and like apologize and blah. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Like, and that was like years ago. He's like, and then he's like, and then he eventually concluded, it was like, well, I'm queer. It's like, how can she even think that? I'm like, it's like, what happened? It's like, how do we go from like rebelling against the like authority? Like I've never like completely agreed with like their stances, but at least it seemed that they were edgy, or they're speaking their mind.
Yeah.
They're doing their thing. But now it's like they became like apologetic, and they're worried about like some what somebody they said years ago. It's like, to me, that's a weak person. That's just like the human race just getting weaker and weaker, and that's what they want from everybody, to take these vaccines. Don't exercise. Who cares about what you look like? Cut off your genitals.
Yeah.
That's all they're trying to do. They want like a weak, submissive society, and that's part of what woke is.
Yeah, the men definitely.
Yeah,
yeah, that is an interesting point, because I've early 2000s I was a big like follower of like comedians and stuff like that, and I was a big Opie and Anthony fan. I'm not sure if you guys know who that is, but
I think so. But they all got soft, right?
No. It was sort of like a Howard Stern-esque type of show, and they would bring on like some really good comedians like Louis C.K. in his early years was big on that show, and it was really like the only outlet like over time where you had just personalities being open and talking about what it was like a sort of podcast before podcasts were a thing, and it's one of those things where like I kind of like went into my own echo chamber listening to that stuff, and then I come out and like I'm trying to talk to people about like Trayvon Martin and stuff, and everyone else's opinions are so like safe and so like I don't want to offend anybody, and it's like what we're at a party in a bar, like no one's gonna arrest you for having an opinion. Like what the fuck happened? You know? Yeah. So I don't know, that does worry me. Like just how pussy society is becoming, and so unfun too. Yeah, there's just like a weird.
You don't feel like the Z's are starting to turn? I mean, a big contingent of the Z's are starting to turn that around because, like I was saying on that other one, a lot of them are really funny, and they seem to be rejecting, except the ones that go to college. But
I mean, like that's the thing where it's like the ones that are kind of based are going to get more based, but the ones that are the opposite, they're going to get more pro-establishment-y and like that. There's going to be a weird divide there, and I'm not sure like the middle ground, what the middle ground is going to be with Gen Z. It's that is a weird one.
It seems like that they're less likely, even in the worst case, let's say that the kind of woke element takes over or dominates, they're less likely to be as bad as the woke millennials because they're afraid of conflict, so that they won't riot as much. Like so they'll just cry and want the world to change. So that could be a positive.
I guess I'll just jump in and say like I'll start like by describing what I would say what wokeism is or woke means. I would just say I start off it's like a kind of belief system. It's a way for people to think in a very like predictable one-dimensional pattern. Like as far as anything race related, there's no other factors that go into the whatever, like what's that Neely guy, the subway guy that got chokeholded, what's the guy's name?
Jordan Neely.
What is it?
Is it Jordan Neely?
I think so. Yeah, that might be it. But if you're someone that just saw that and only thought about the race angle, no other factors, then like you're kind of in the beginning of the trap of wokeism. Like you're thinking very predictable, and I mean I don't know. Like what do you guys think as far as this thought pattern thing?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because when I'm curious, because when I talk to people, it's almost like I can kind of predict what their arguments are gonna say, and I feel like I just kind of like hold on for a second, let me write down what I think you're gonna say, and then speak, and I'll look at my card and see how right I was, and yeah, it's like,
and then they run away because they don't like that.
Yeah.
Well, they don't run away; they scream.
Yeah, they scream.
Oh, I've gotten to a point where, like, if I say something, I call them out.
Mm-hmm.
It's either I'm racist or I'm anti-Semitic. Mm-hmm. So it's like they don't even try to like understand where I'm coming from. Like I understand where they're coming from, what they're saying, but they don't take the time to like really listen to the other side. It's always like you're racist, you're anti-Semitic.
Because that's why they're totally divorced from why they shouldn't be called the left. And I don't mean to defend the left, but traditional, like Jimmy Dore, traditional leftists, you know, because they believe things like speech is violent. That's why they don't listen. They really don't believe that if they a difference of opinion, listening to a difference of opinion is enabling that opinion, and if they believe the opinion is violence, therefore they're enabling you to be violent at them by having a different opinion. It's very interesting.
Yeah. But,
And it's like Thomas Sowell said, like I don't have the exact quote, but he said something about evading the truth. It's like they're really good, like they're like some of them, like they're like intellectuals and they sound like they're smart, just like in the facade. But it's like they're able to talk in a way, a sophisticated way, where they just evade the truth at all costs. And eventually, they also resort to like saying, "Oh, you're racist," or you're homophobic, anti-Semitic, but they're really good at just evading or somehow figuring out a way to like not actually ask the important questions at hand.
But they're really bad at like delving into a subject just to see like, you know, how many branches you can go in a particular subject. Like the Neely case, they're just gonna think about the race angle. They're not gonna think about like, you know, the crime in New York angle. They're not gonna think about mental health angle. They're not gonna think about, you know, the proper ways to subdue people. They're not gonna do that because I don't know what it is. I feel like there's like some weird, like societal intimidation that they feel from like going into those like, quote, like rabbit holes of just truth. It's weird.
Yeah, they're also not consistent in like their beliefs. So it's hard to like kind of like debate with somebody like that because they'll say one thing and then you'll get them on a contradiction and it's like, well, no, like. That's not how it works. Like it's like no, it's like if you're gonna believe one thing, you have to like follow through on your beliefs, and that's why it's pointless to debate with them because they don't have an actual belief system. It's always what's that word? That genderless or like gender fluid?
Oh, gender fluid. Yeah.
Gender fluid or like thought fluid, belief fluid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit more simple. I kind of think that it's attention. They kind of memorize those bullet points, just the very superficial issue about each of those topics, and they can't back any of that up.
I do think that like how do I put this? Like I don't think that like the woke people like even engage in these kind of conversations. I think they just sort of like they have their life and then once it's time for them to like shine, it's very like I'm gonna virtue signal, blah blah blah, and then I'm gonna go back to TikTok or some shit like that. Like it's very
I'm just laughing because of the way Kiki explained the whole woke thing, like very simply.
Yeah,
it's true. It's like Obama, like the whole word salad, just picking up like really big words and just throwing it up there and just strutting like all proud.
Social construct.
Yeah,
it's a social construct. I hate that term.
Yeah, like every time I see like AOC on television, it's always like big word, democracy, big word. Insurrection, big word. It's like there's nothing of stuff. It's like a Mad Libs kind of thing. It's
exactly.
It's so odd, and it's
fifth grader.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think there is something about like the eradication of conversation. That adds to that kind of shit. Like people are just afraid to talk.
I feel like I think it's interesting that you bring up the fear part. I that's generous on your part towards them, and I know I respect it. Because I think that with the younger ones, there's some truth. I guess in my head, I make a distinction between a belief and the actions that follow from that belief. So when I'm thinking of woke, I'm thinking of a spectrum. Where there's just the people who have generalized uncritical woke beliefs because that's what they've been indoctrinated in. And I think a lot of younger kids particularly have this. And then a lot of them hopefully will grow out of it. And then there's like the next level of posting level. Like they need to virtue signal at the right time and let you know, but they don't really think about it much. But then the active one. So those ones I'm like, I can go along with you there. But the active ones are the ones that like riot, that kind of screwed up Portland. They're the ones that silence people. So for them, I'm not as charitable as you. and I think that there's a deeper truth when you guys are talking about like they're inconsistent, like you're talking about them being inconsistent. Fundamentally, few, if any, I mean, there's probably a couple of them, don't really know the philosophical basis of their own belief systems.
Yeah.
And I don't say that arrogantly, but it's like they have these smatterings. I think I talked about this a little bit on the other podcast. They have a smattering of traditional leftism, like they'll talk about Marx and stuff. But the majority of their views in terms of language, and it really trickled down into gender and all this stuff, is postmodernism. And the idea of deconstructing language is at the heart of that. So it deconstructs all meaning. So they don't really even realize. This is why they can shift. And it's maddening if you kind of come from an old school. Like, I just want to have a rational argument. Let's have point counterpoint and see which one gets closer to the truth.
Yeah,
it's maddening to try to engage with them. It's not just that they're stupid. That's kind of cheap. They can become really well educated in a philosophical system that's stupid. And it's like they're unaware of their own inconsistency.
Yeah.
Like in the mid-tier to higher up ones, in terms of consciously woke. I don't think that they realize that they don't have a philosophy. They don't know the grounds of their own philosophy, so they don't even know what they're doing. Like they don't know how ridiculous they are sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I started this show, because I wanted to see like how I'm consistent on certain things. That's why I don't listen to my show that much. But when I skim through it, I try to listen to how consistent I am on principles, and I like you said, I don't think they are aware of like the shit that comes out of their mouth and the stuff that they say, because I think they're so they're attached to like things that just sound good rather than things that actually are rational and stuff like that. There's like this boner they have for like virtue signaling, that they think that problems are solved by just how much I can virtue signal, and voila, the gay issues are gone because I virtue signaled them away or something like that.
But that would be fine. To me, that would be like, okay, they believe a thing and that thing is silly. The problem with it is that with woke, this vague thing called woke, intolerance is hard baked into it. So they are incapable. The more woke they get, they have to silence other people. It's like hard baked into it. So, it brings out the fight in a lot of people in a way that, it's not like there hasn't been actual leftists, right? There were real leftists, revolutionary leftists, and, neo-Nazis, there's communists. We've had that forever. Look at this. Look at the late 60s. Like, if you want to see some hardcore, a spectrum of leftism. And yet the mainstream wasn't co-opted by it to anything like this degree. The media wasn't co-opted by it. And it didn't, it was never really able to seduce the government or all of the institutional culture. So this is is weirdly, I think, more dangerous.
Yeah, me too. That's a hard thing to explain to people. Like I was at a friend's party like a few months ago, and they were bringing up the transgender stuff, and I didn't really chime in because I was eating, and they were having their own little thing. But they were so there's like everything they said was predictable but very safe and kind of just dull. Like, that's why I didn't really engage in the conversation, because it was so like, oh well, I know I have gay friends, so let's just moving on kind of shit. It was very, it was like the most unengaging political conversation I ever heard in my life. You know what I mean? And yeah, that shit just, I don't know where that comes from. I don't know. Go ahead.
It reminded me of something back when I studied Nazi Germany, and I'm not being hyperbole here, but it's actually a positive. I was studying the Hitler Youth, and it was this late stage Hitler Youth kid that was fought. It was at the end of the war, so there was two stages of Hitler Youth, and the first stage is the ones you see at those old Nuremberg, the early Nuremberg rally, and they're all fanatical, right? The next generation, who had grown up with it, got bored with it. It wasn't even like some of them got political and they rejected it, but a lot of them were just, I'm bored with it. And so this is kind of a hope again. Like I don't want to put too much hope in Gen Z, but I feel like even that will work to the advantage of people who just want, because they seem to really want normal. They seem to feel like all of us that are older and somewhat, sane, I think. And the data seems to suggest the majority of the population isn't that on board with this. I think that a lot of like liberals just don't really realize, but the kids have to rebel.
Yeah.
So if this is the new norm, it's what they're going to rebel against. That's my hope. It's like, and it seems like it's punk rock to wear a tie and dress up and be conservative. I think that's kind of
and have families and
it's weird. I started a little comic idea I was going to do about that, but
yeah, that is kind of odd because in high school, I hung out with like the punks, and one of them was straight up like he was like hardcore Christian, like he listened to Christian punk, but. We got along because there was like this mutual kind of anti-establishment kind of vibe that we got from each other, and I wasn't even into punk or anything like that, but we just got along. But he was super traditional guy, like didn't like to wasn't into like serial dating, was Christian, didn't drink, straight edge as fuck, but there was like a kind of I don't know. There was like there was this hardcore wholesomeness to him that was kind of fun and really unique about him. So I don't know. But the bored part is an interesting thing you bring up because me and Kiki were talking, and I guess it's a shelved episode, but we talked about just like how like with entertainment, like the woke entertainment, it's just going to create a culture that is so and just so bored because everything is so safe, so like feels the same. It like like people are gonna kind of reject. People are gonna reject that somehow. But yeah, I don't know.
It's becoming the new Hallmark cozy Christmas movie.
Yeah.
But not even that good. It's not cozy. It's like if the movie screamed at you all the time. Too. It's like, this isn't cozy at all. They're not funny. It's just they're not funny. Like that was a big sign too. Like kind of one of the cultural like what the fucks was when the comedians were always out front. They're always the front boldest. And when that started getting like shut down, and then they started getting tame, I'm like, that's kind of hopeful too, because you got to have laughs. So
there was even a weird period when like offensive comedians were becoming kind of woke. Like I remember.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Like Sarah Silverman. This is a while ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she early days she was great. Like she was super out there, offensive, but then she just flipped and. Like she just became so annoying and so boring after that, and like, what's fun about someone who's just so safe? Like I just don't understand it at all.
I think it also goes back to that idea of a lot of older ones didn't realize what was happening. I think a lot of older, she's Gen X, like when you basically the left, the broad speaking pre-woke liberal won the culture war. So then you become, in a few more years, you become the establishment. So there's a whole bunch of older, more liberal types, I think, are they're starting to wake up now, but they're oblivious. I think maybe Sarah Silverman, and there's a lot of them that they think that they're anti-establishment. They just don't realize that it's flipped.
Yeah.
But some of them are starting to realize it, and it causes kind of a identity crisis.
Yeah. I guess I have UAK. I mean, there is some like ties to like Marxism and socialism and communism with woke ideology. I guess if like, would you be able to like briefly kind of explain like
no,
or if you just want to go ahead and just
I'll try.
I guess because they are linked.
Well, I actually like. There's this whole idea that you hear from the right about the culture of Marxism, and it's a useful, like, broad stroke thing. But I don't think that that's really it at all. In fact, I think it's if Marxism, and I'm not a fan of Marxism, but I'll take old school communists, radical students any day over this, because they had a meta theory that was cohesive that they tried to live up to, right? And then you have the anarchists. Marx, and I get the idea that it was that the idea of the class was replaced by identity groups, and there's something to that. So that's a basic idea, is that conservatives will say that the class view of Marx didn't work, so they get together at the Frankfurt School and they say we got to rework Marxism so that we're going to focus on race and identity groups. And there's some truth to that, but woke, I don't think that that's. I think the conflict area you could say comes from Marx. We have this long tradition of a group against another, the powerful against the weak. This is it's even American. That's an American thing outside of the communist thing. But woke, I view it as far more postmodern. So a lot of French theorists came in, I don't know, 50s, 60s, and everything. The idea of deconstructing language, truth is created by the language. There's no fundamental truth.
Yeah.
Foucault was also all about power. So you can't have any relationships, any kind of dynamics between people without power. There's always an expression of a power dynamic. That's why in critical race theory, they stopped talking about institutional racism. Do you remember when everyone talked about institutional racism and no one talks about that anymore? They talk about systemic racism.
Yeah.
It's because there's this invisible thing. So every interaction, even if you're not aware of it, every single interaction is weighted with race in the United States.
Yeah.
So you have something that comes from postmodernism that is wishy-washy at the base of it. It has a lack of consistency, and at the same time, so there's just a few like almost token elements to Marxism. This is why they'll fly like a Marxist. They want socialism. Ask them to define socialism. You know, they have a problem. Conservatives can't define woke. Ask them to define socialism. A few of them ever can.
Yeah.
So it's mostly a postmodern thing. That's my thing. And I also do think it's a generational. It's the other factor that is overlooked, or at least it's not emphasized enough, is that it's a product of the first generation. I'm not blaming millennials for this. I'm critical of the cohort, but I love a lot of millennials. It was the first generation brought up by parents who are responsible, based on a psychological idea of affirming everything all of the time. So it was a self-esteem focused generation that came of age. And so this incredible entitlement meets vulnerability and fragility at the same time. And then they go to the schools that are dominated by postmodernism.
Yeah.
This gives birth to woke. Loosely speaking, that's my pop theory.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Fortunately, none of them can disprove me because they don't study history. Because history's racist.
Yeah, the feelings affirming thing is a good point. I didn't think about that. Yeah, because dealing with a lot of like the SJW types, like they're so emotionally fragile that it's so bizarre that I talked to one they break down. It's like you're like someone in your 30s. You shouldn't be acting like this.
I've seen two just going on walks,
Uh-huh.
having like I know panic attacks. I've had panic attacks, but just like they're laying and screaming on the sidewalk, and you can tell it's just because they're so fragile they can't handle sunlight and air. It's like it's insane.
I don't know. And also, there is this weird thing with wokeness kind of being like anti-family and anti, I don't know what you call it, like fatherhood or something like that, which is kind of odd to me. Like you'll never see anything that's like a woke movie that's about someone just having a family and falling in love and having kids. Like I've been watching like a lot of like people butcher the Peter Pan remake movie from Disney Plus, and a lot of them are pointing out that when Wendy does her I forget, like I think when they have to fly, they have to think of their happy thought or something like that, and Wendy's happy thought is that she just grows old, like single, and she's like a girl boss or some shit like that.
Yeah.
And so like it makes me wonder like what is it with the nuclear family that like just goes against wokeness, like 'cause I think a dad in general is someone that is a little bit more stern, someone who's a little bit more like, nah, you're not fucking doing that. They're not the hold your hand type of person, and it's weird culture.
Let you color your hair purple and pierce everything in your face. Yeah.
So it's weird that that's kind of run its course, and like that's culturally, like fathers are just kind of not really celebrated that much.
Sad.
I think it's because we grew up thinking that the father figure was the establishment figure, the one that you go to school, work a 9-to-5 job, corporate, clean cut.
Yeah.
And woke is kind of, like I said, cutting your hair, coloring it purple, bunch of piercings, tattoos, screaming on the floor.
Yeah.
It's anti-establishment. It's cool. It's edgy. It's fun.
Yeah. There's this annoying. Like I love individuality and individualism, and when I see like the blue-haired, piercing, gender, whatever, I think that it's like they think they're trying to be individualist, but it's like this. It's like fake individuality. It's like it's really hollow, self-absorbed individuality. It's it's like are you guys familiar with the term poser? It's like an old punk rock.
Back in my day, we used it all the time. Yes.
Yeah, it's like
do a kickflip.
Yeah.
Poser.
I was the epitome of a poser. I'd carry around. I couldn't skate, but I dressed like a skater, carried a skateboard around. I got laid a lot. It got me laid. What can I say? It worked.
Yeah, it's like I think a lot of the wokeness. I think a lot of it is like a poser, communist kind of thing. It's like they hear that socialism, communism is like trendy and cool, so they're just. It's like they're, like they went to Hot Topic and bought like I'm a communist shirt or something like that. It's very poser thing, and that's kind of warped into this monster that's inconsistent and just annoying and terrible. And yeah, it's I don't know.
We're living like in a very convenient time where everything is really comfortable. For example, and people just have too much time on their hands. Like for example, like I saw this one guy that recently he got a tattoo, but he got a tattoo of like a scar, like going across his eye. It kind of, like you remember like Sub-Zero, like back in the 90s. I had that scar, so he did like the same thing. And he's like looking in the mirror, like, yeah, I look so badass. It's like, who would want to do that? Like back in the 50s or 40s, like that's something that comes from the privilege of just having so much time and not having to work hard.
Yeah, that kind of also ruined. I was talking with my a friend who's my age, and he's He's not crazy woke. He's stuck in the 90s liberal. Like he can't comprehend why I've switched. And we often were kind of Trekkies, you know. You have this Star Trek view of what's going to happen. If we only had the replicator, we would all be pursuing our whatever we want to pursue, that we'd live up to our highest values. Well, the reality is like that leisure that you're talking about. Well, we had that in 2020. It's like we had a little test of what would happen. And with a bunch of money handed out, and what does people do is, well, a lot of people just drank more, got more depressed, and a lot of young people, particularly young men, went out and smashed the shit out of everything. I'm not against leisure, but that was kind of a like, well, we have a big laboratory that just happened that says that Star Trek is not going to happen unless we have something more to it. You just can't. We need to have challenge. I'm not against like leisure. It's great to have leisure, but capitalism has given us that. That's part of my great awakening. But that's we don't. There's leisure, but without aspiration. Like, people don't aspire. Like kids back in the day aspired to be astronauts or firefighters or whatever. Now it's and to work. The idea was I'm going to earn it, and now it's like I'm going to be a what's it called, a influencer. I'm just going to be that. Maybe if I get a scar tattoo on my eye, that will help me become one.
Yeah. Yeah, that is an interesting point. The comfortability factor is really odd, because whenever I would like have sort of debates with people on like COVID related debates, and you know, the ones that like, oh, just do what they're told, kind of like they were all people that had like safe positions, like they worked in some kind of salary based corporate job where they just go in, do nothing, and get paid and come back. And I was trying to like, you know, you have to tell them like you have to think about the people that don't live that kind of life, like the people that go out and struggle, and like, but they just didn't care about that. They had like this. Well, I mean,
I wrote a book during that time period. I'm like, I didn't do a lot, but I'm like, yeah, this is an opportunity. Government's freaking throwing money at me for some crazy. You know, I'm going to write a book. Finally got around to doing the book. It's like, and it still dumbfounds me why a lot of people did though. A lot of people became entrepreneurs. So there's always going to be. It's like the 80-20 rule. I think that's just, it applies in society. We're always going to have 80% of people who are feckless or who just settle. But we have to have a social, I'm just speculating, we have to have a level of social cohesion that makes it so that that 80% is relatively stable. That's why I'm a moderate. You got to keep them kind of placated, stable, because that's what they want.
Yeah.
And as much as it's weird to me that not everyone wants to aspire to big stuff, that's just the way it is. So we just got to give them more video game. Let's state-funded video games. So they won't be rioting.
People seem
video games.
Yeah, we need more role models. There's like a lack of purpose because people are lacking role models or lacking a dad, even like a mom. But yeah, dad, just like the fatherless families. Like, I mean, if you have a dad, he's gonna get on you. It's like, and even if you don't become what he wanted you to become, you still have purpose because you eventually maybe go against what he wants, but you find the purpose in what makes you happy.
Yeah.
So just having that role model or having like the dad or like somebody to aspire to or somebody that sort of mentor that will kind of like pivot you in the right direction, like sort of upward trajectory instead of just like, no, just do drugs, sleep all day, and
it conditions you to having limits.
Like, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like a discipline.
Yeah.
I guess it's let's talk about just sort of like how this stuff is sort of seeped into big institutions. Not like how that happened, because I'm not sure if that's like a confusing thing to explain, but just like as far as how it's infested schools. If people try to deny that's a thing, I mean, I don't know
I'm in
how.
Portland, man.
Yeah, but also I would say like, okay, you vote Democrat no matter what. Like, like where did that come from? Like, did you have like your growing up surroundings? Like, did you ever have anything that told you, you know, any other how do you put this? Backtrack. Growing up, going to school, your whole social bubble, was there anyone that um didn't vote Democrat or didn't think in a very particular singular way? And like that's a big way to just figure out like or just to see the indoctrination. Because I mean, you know, growing up, school, I mean, every teacher, you know, didn't like Republicans and blah blah blah, and you know, hated Nixon and shit like that, and you know.
I'm interested, like hearing all of you guys and kind of knowing what demographic you're at. Like, you guys all Z millennial thereabouts?
I'm in my mid-30s from LA,
Oh, okay.
so that's my thing.
LA, that's sweet. Yeah, I'm interested in hearing.
Yeah. I think.
Yeah, same thing. I'm like from like the 80s too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
80s. You all had like teachers that were like everyone was a Democrat when you were in school, and your teachers basically were.
Pretty much.
So weird to me.
Yeah, like I didn't. It's only been like the last 10 years where I just realized how odd that is. That like every teacher I had literally had like the same opinions, and I have there's someone in my family who was trying to be a public school teacher, and their political views are a little bit more, you know, center right. And this was years ago. He was in the running to teach economics, but then they had like this sort of a group meeting, and they just asked him about his politics, and he didn't really think that much of it. He was just like, that's just odd that they're asking me these questions, and I just want to teach economics to like high schoolers. And he didn't really think much of it, but like later on he was kind of following what's happening, and he's like, damn, like this shit's been going on longer than I even think. So
Interesting.
yeah, so that's a weird thing, but it's I don't know, because
when I grew up, I mean, I was a kid of the 80s. I graduated in 91. And I didn't go in a place like LA, so it was a smaller town, mid-sized town, Central Washington. Lots of conservative people, and my sense was that all of the majority of hippies became teachers, but they were like hippie, like old school, like liberals. But there was very few instances where you would know what their politics were. They didn't, like in a history class. It has to do with pedagogy and how people were taught. You're taught by the teacher, regardless of what their politics is, to write essays by examining both sides and then try to come up with your best arguments. So I had friends, I briefly, like in ninth grade or whatever, I thought I was a young Republican. By the end, I'm kind of a Democrat. I'm hanging out with the kind of the punk kids, and then I'm Mormon. You know, there's just like the politics were all over the place, and no one would ever, in my entire experience, have a political litmus test in any way. It would be inconceivable.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like in high school every single subject teacher would rant about politics, but like the ones that would occasionally say something about whatever, it was always, you know, pro-Democrat, Republicans are evil, bad, rich, blah blah blah.
Weird. That's so weird to me.
Yeah, and I mean, it was, and like, I know people that are public school teachers now, and they're so upfront with their like far left shit, And like, I just think like there's no fucking way that you're gonna, if I had kids, that you would, and I would let you even teach them at all, because like one I know specifically is like pro Antifa, so, and they're an elementary
Oh,
teacher, so. But
I become a little bit extreme right wing about that. Like I like purge them from the schools, because you bring up schools, and that's like the most scary. That's the scariest part. Not they have their claws in all levels now. I mean, it's one thing college. That's bad enough, but
yeah,
it's because the percentage is so skyrocketed. It's like 90 something percent identify as left. It's university professors, and they're not the old left. They're not like free speech. They are. We want to destroy the country and teach our kids, these kids, to do this. But now that when you have it in elementary level, and it's insane.
yeah,
It's a real problem.
to say the least. Yeah, and and you know, this also goes into just like the corporate world, and the HR departments have gone super woke. Like my last job was a kind of more corporate kind of thing, and I saw it sort of slowly get more annoying. And just little things, you notice that like certain people that were being leveled up, as far as like managers and stuff, they were all like kind of undeserving females. I guess you could say, like, not the most qualified, not the most professional, but they were just, hey, she's a woman, let's give her a hand. She's the, you know what I mean? And so I mean, I can't imagine ever going back to any kind of corporate gig, because I think corporate world just in general is just almost like nightmarishly gonna get more and more woke. But I mean, it's odd how the woke stuff kind of lends itself to corporate world, because corporate world, you think about it, it's always straight laced, clean cut, don't be the offensive person, always be the yes man. And woke kind of like sort of perfectly matches that kind of shit. If like you're the super woke person, yeah.
Well, like, I mean, well, like corporations are kind of like a shadow of the government, because like when corporations are in trouble, or like banks are in trouble, like who do they look to? They look towards like the government. It's like, come on, help us out, bail us out. It's like they're working. They're in cahoots, I guess. They're like working together. So these big corporations, they're just, it's like a shadow of the government. Like that's how they get their things done, along with nonprofits and GMOs.
I guess we also have to get into just like there's a like the collectivist angle of wokeness. That is a very big thing with it. And I don't know, it's like I've yet to meet someone who is woke that isn't super like, I just repeat what the crowd says. And I don't know, like, where does that
kind of goes along with what you were saying about fear, which I hadn't really thought about before. It's like, of course you'd be collectivist if you're afraid to be an individual and stand out. It's an interesting way to look at it. It's easier to go along with a crowd, but then on top of it, you get to go along with a crowd that it's delusional. So you were talking before about the idea of conformity. And this goes, I think, hand in hand with the collectivism. So if you think about, and how you remember kids being like, a punk rock kid is like, what is a rebel? And how the left. If you think about back in the day, for a generation and a half at least, like the suburbs was the epitome of like, let's make fun of conformity. So it's like, that's you make fun of that conformity, and how do you like Keeping Up Appearances, that British comedy show, which I think it's great, an old school comedy show. What do that kind of suburban they're not really suburban because it's UK, but that kind of middle class, white toast, their form of uniqueness and individuality is a different car, like a different a consumer good or a planter in their yard, right?
Yeah.
And then we make fun of that. Oh, look at that, and we're going to be punk rock or whatever. This is like back in the day. But the thing is that to be a rebel back then, even a superficial rebel, just like a rebel kid that's looking different with the blue hair or whatever, it was nonconformist. There was an essential nonconformity that kind of defined it. Whereas the woke, it seems to me, they're like they're like the suburbs with blue hair. They don't realize that they get to have the feeling that like I am a rebel. Oops, sorry, I'm a rebel like these punk kids back in the day. But everything about it is suburban.
Yeah.
It's like the tamest of conformity. And then they get to feel like they're rebellious and they're outsiders, but they're the ultimate conformists. And what does like the old suburban people, they want to have the homeowners association and control everything. There's kind of a weird little collectivism there, but yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it's funny because whenever like you picture the SJW person with the hair and the outfit, it's almost like they're wearing like a uniform, and it's so I explain it, like
ugly.
It feels like when you watch like Star Wars and like there's R2D2, but then there's the other robots that are R2D2 like, but they're like painted different. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of how it feels like. It's like they think they're being unique, but they're all sort of feel the same and talk the same, and
it's like they're middle schoolers, but 30 in their 30s. In that same sense.
Yeah. I guess let's see. I think also to sort of touch on, there is like I think a good like a spiritual aspect to it, because it is very much a kind of culty kind of religion belief system, and so I do find it kind of interesting, like the more and more than when I hear, like I've been hearing conservatives and religious types like mention like what happens to society if we stray further away from religion, like what's going to be the end result. And then I see the wokeness and I'm like, I think that's kind of what they've been talking about.
Yes. So much.
Like
I'm interested in hearing what you guys have to say about this, because I'll ramble if somebody doesn't jump in. I'm just saying.
I mean, I just like for a while, like I would kind of cringe when people would say, "Oh, this is a spiritual war" and stuff like that. But now I'm kind of thinking, like, since I'm more thinking more in line of like how the wokeness is kind of a cult, it kind of is a sort of spiritual war in just the sense that they're trying to sort of colonize everything as far as institutions and the way people power and how people think. Like there is a psychological, spiritual aspect to what they do. I don't know. I guess you want to jump in now.
Anybody else?
No, I agree. I do think it is a religion. I think trying to break down that traditional lifestyle and how we live our lives. But yeah.
Because like I was thinking about the other day, and like I haven't really been to church in quite some time, but I do realize that there's some things missing from just not having that in my like weekly kind of repertoire of just going to church, because there was something communal about that. And even when I did go to church, I was a kid, and I'm not paying attention obviously, but at the very least it was just like a community of people going to a place to try to like, I don't know, like hear advice or something that would to like better themselves. And you know, if you're a parent and you have the kid that isn't paying attention, at least you're for that hour or so they're at least quiet and just being good. You know what I mean? So, um, like, what happens when you take that away from people? Like, they don't really know what to do with themselves, and they're gonna want to, like, that urge to save the world is gonna be in people. I don't think that's gonna go away. So, you know, wokeness comes along, and here they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lack of like having purpose, and also like having like what you guys were talking about, like the code or like a belief system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you don't necessarily have to become like religious. I think God is important, like in everybody's life.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion. But um, I what was I kind of like lost what I was gonna say.
Yeah, that's okay.
But I was gonna say, come back to me, come back to me.
You can come back to you if you want.
Yeah, let me think about it. Like it kind of like
Spence.
my brain.
I guess Spence, you want to jump in?
So I definitely think it is a cult. I think a cult's a good term to describe it. Before everyone was calling it a cult, my sense, and I remember telling people this, is like they reminded me of Puritans, and since then I have a friendlier view about the Puritans, but they're a cult, and they have with tendencies towards being apocalyptic. So they have all these elements that it's hard not to say that they're a cult. But what's really fascinating to me is that you don't need to be a religious person. I'm spiritual in my own way. I'm a constant seeker, but because Nietzsche, who is the ultimate atheist, it's like, and when 2020 happened, it's like he is a freaking prophet, because what he said, he's famous for saying God is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And his whole thing is people like, right, oh, see, God is dead. They think he's saying something cool. Well, he was an atheist. He said, this is a really dangerous thing. Because if we don't create men with new values, the Ubermensch, like these men that are strong enough of will and character to create new values, then the nihilists will come. And they're like sheep on crack. And it's like I'm in 2020 watching them tear my city, and I'm like, this is nihilism. This is a religion, because you have to, like, if you want to shift it back to kind of what traditional religious terms, or even let's say addiction stuff, people talk about the God-sized hole. Well, I think that there's something legit there, that we do need God or something that's spiritual to fill it. Well, the wokeism is kind of, seems to me, another one of those laboratory proofs, like a test that prove it. So because there's no doubt that we've become irreligious over time. And I think a lot of it, again, I think there's spiritual components, but even if we set that aside, you were kind of talking about that social and psychological elements. Like you mentioned, going there, like as a kid, there's a bit of community. Community, what versus what? Collectivism. Or notice the folk community, LGBTQ community. I'm part of this community, which are fundamentally not real communities. So you end up having this empty alternative. And I think a lot of people start seeing that, have started seeing that, who were kind of fine being like irreligious or vaguely religious. And it's almost like you can't help but start opening up to, like, there might be something more to this.
Yeah.
Like, for the first time in my life, like, are there demons? There might be demons. Like, I don't know anymore. So, yeah, I think that there's something to it. But it has all of the hallmarks of a cult. Like, okay, tearing down statues. Do you remember if
wasn't ISIS doing that?
ISIS,
yeah.
Well, yeah, ISIS blowing up the Buddha statues. I'm like, oh, just my historian side. It's like, oh, stop taking the statues, and then having purity tests of your beliefs. If they came out tomorrow and said, we're going to start dunking people into water, like, and if they float, then they're woken. If they sink, they're woke enough. If they float, then they're going to be canceled. I wouldn't be surprised if they started doing it.
They just dunk each other in like hair dye or something like that.
And then there's that apocalyptic end times element too.
Yeah.
The world's going to end in 12 years or, whatever. There's always something.
That's what's so like funny to me when like they ridicule like the conservatives like, oh, Jesus is coming, that's so crazy. But then, thinking the world's going to end in like 12 to 20 years because of, the weather, that's kind of, it's like you're like saying the end is nigh also.
The end is nigh.
You know what I mean? So
it's not as fun if you look back at our apocalypse. America has some rich like religious apocalyptic shit going back like into the very beginning, like people predicting the ends. It's like at least that was kind of creative and it was less destructive. It's like they'd have revivals and people would, speak in tongues and stuff, not like we're going to destroy everything. They'd go and try to create, they would actually try to create little communities, usually more often Mormons and all that.
Yeah. I think lastly, the one thing I was kind of curious what you guys think. So me and Kiki were talking about this in the unaired episode, but I've noticed that like a lot like, with the left, there's like when it comes to like big social issues or whatever, like the way they approach it, like their thinking process is almost, it's kind of naive and kind of childlike. But when it comes to, it's like they suppress that, but like I think they use that sort of but like when it comes to sexuality, they're almost like so overt, like it's almost vulgar. It's like this weird like teeter-totter where like when it comes to like things to be an adult, they're kind of childish, but when it comes to sex, like they're almost talking about anal and blowjobs and like they're almost so like their interpretation of being an adult is through sexuality rather than taking care of business on a more adult level, if any of that makes sense. You know what I mean?
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because what's that what's his name? What's that singer guy that was on the Grammys, the Satan guy?
Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy that dressed like a devil.
Yeah, like there's that interview where he's talking about Fisher them. I don't know if you guys saw that where he's like talking about he's like into fishing and he's like, oh, I'm a fisher them or something like that. He says it's like some weird thing. But like how he was speaking, like it felt like a grown man acting like a child. But then I'm watching that, but I'm also thinking about like his performances were like so overtly sexual. It's like this weird, like when you suppress something here, it's just gonna explode somewhere else, and like which is interesting, like because the whole like gender ideology stuff is so weird and creepy.
No. There's nothing weird about that all of a sudden there's 500 genders and everyone's just going along with it. That's normal.
But it's like
Hitler.
But like I'm not gonna say I'm prudish or by any sense, but like when they're like making me feel uncomfortable with like some of their overt sexual stuff, it's like something's really odd going on here. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
It's on a personal level, it's that one's more irritating to me because it's like Sarah Silverman. There used to be this edge. I used to make crude jokes. I make glory hole. I'm a gay guy. I make glory hole jokes and stuff like that. I'm like, I can't anymore because you've eliminated taboo. The taboo, like you're supposed to be able to have now and again some funnies that make people like, I don't know, that's funny because but now it's now you have a few years back and I get it, it's because of a law, but still you had in the UK a bunch of people protesting against a law by sitting on each other's face out in public. I'm like, this is your power to the people, is sitting on each other's face because you're fighting for your right to eat an ass. Like this is weird. It's like this is
in public or in private.
I don't know about what their law was. I mean, maybe they were protesting, but still, it's a weird. I'm agreeing with you. Yeah. There's something really weird there. And also, because it's at the same time, it's sexual, but so much of their ideology is actually it's divorced from sex. It's like that thing I ranted about before is gay people have nothing, are the antithesis of queer, the woke, the gender thing, because it's grounded in it. I can't be gay unless there are men, you know. So they're at that at once like weirdly, wildly, they glorify fetish. If you want to have a private fetish, have a private fetish. I'm not a prude, but they make this into like an identity, and then they actually effectively are undermining 40 to 50 years of gay rights by denying sex, and also just screwing up all these kids that are being taught that there's no no gender. Well,
yeah, the taboo thing is an interesting point. Like I was thinking the other day, I know there's people that like I've been seeing like the like a rise in people believing that porn should be banned, and I've never been one to be on board with that, but I was thinking like we've gone to a point where like culturally we're like so like sexuality is portrayed so overtly that it's getting weird to the point where like I don't want to see like I don't want the #1 movie in America to be like, you know, Anal Asian MILFs Part 9, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it should be more like a reward than
it should be strictly
that's all.
But like,
you know what?
Yeah, I got what you mean. But
sex in general. I'm not.
Yeah, but like it's weird. Like when you mentioned like the tabooness is becoming mainstream, and it's like I don't think when that's good for society when like you know weird taboo stuff is like just on you know Folgers commercials or something like that. So yeah.
I think both men and women kind of have like the power of like controlling that sort of like sexual energy, because I think sexual energy is really good in achieving things and accomplishing things, and people just like throwing it away is just kind of like leaving them empty, like an empty shell, because they're not really accomplishing anything, and it's just making them more lazy. They're just not getting that high anymore, and so that's when they start getting more into like these weird degenerate sort of like activities. But yeah, like if men and women can kind of keep each other on check, where like a woman kind of keeps like makes it more sacred, where like she's gonna reward the guy after he achieves sort of like something, like he has to like kind of work for it, and same thing like kind of where
I know what you're going with this.
Yeah, it's a thing where both men and women kind of have to keep each other on check, where it just you can't have too much of it, because that sexual energy also kind of produces like really good things. That's the reason we have so many good things in life. I think in moderation, as a reward, sex is good, but like just overdoing it, that's why we have all these pedophiles and all these degenerates doing all this, like these crazy like I don't know, you know, like all those. You've heard it.
We've seen them, yeah.
You've seen it,
yeah. Yeah, but there is this weird thing of like divorcing sex from love that's really kind of warped. Just what people view as like I can't imagine how hard it is for like you know 18 to like 25-year-olds to like find a good relationship now. When like culturally like, everything is so like out of bounds, like promiscuity is so celebrated, but you know I don't know, it's kind of a downer to think about, but
try being a middle-aged gay conservative in Portland. See how your options dry up then.
I never asked you, but are you single or are you
single? I'm super single. I've been for a long time, and I've had my my slutty side. I do agree with that point about you know, using energy to like transmuting it, but I think that's kind of a personal thing. Gay guys were in the past way on the front of culture building while having a lot of sex, so you can do that. You could have your cake and eat it too, but yeah, I'm interested in your guys' opinions on that, what you were talking about in outline porn. Like, well, do you support it?
I don't, because I'm not. There's something about just like banning. I don't know. I don't know if you would consider it creative content, but something about banning stuff. I'm not. I can't really get on board. It's just something fundamental about it that I'm not okay with. I don't know. What about you guys? Are you on board with the banning of the porn, or?
Well, I don't agree with banning it. I think people should like kind of like it should be up to you. You should kind of like just restrict or not like because the thing with that it's like it's like war people's
Oh yeah,
mind,
definitely.
and it's just like it's really affecting people adversely more worse than yeah, it's doing more bad than good.
Yeah, like I don't think it's good if someone's like watching a lot of porn, but yeah, if you want to have your weekly session, I guess you could say. I mean, I'm not gonna hate on that. I don't know. What do you think, Spence?
I don't support banning. I actually worked in the porn as writing in the porn industry for quite a while. I'm not proud of that, but
Writing,
in
really?
my dark period, but websites and shit like that.
Okay.
But I'm not a fan of it. But I'm very I'm all about free speech. And I also remember in the 80s and 90s, it's like the same arguments were made about porn then, and it was just magazine porn. And I'm not saying that it can't have harm, and they the censor types that usually came from the right back then, and this is why there's a tendency. There's always the kind of a cultural conservative right that I'm very suspicious of, because I grew up with them trying to censor music because music causes violence, TV causes violence. It's like, no, parents not turning shit off could contribute to the kid like maybe having skewed views about stuff, maybe, and even most of that was overstated. I do think that the porn, from what I can gather, it's like way young kids are seeing a lot of it, and we were talking about it's weird shit now.
Yeah, and
so I think that all you do is parents can exercise greater control, and then maybe on a community level, you need to have some kind of whatever technology that makes it so that when they're at school they can't access shit or something. I don't know how it works.
Yeah.
Well, that's the reason why they've worked so hard to like destabilize the family, because a lot of these like single moms that take their kids to like these drag shows are like, yeah, they take them because they have a lack of purpose because they don't have like a strong nan at home, so they take their kid and they sort of like try to vicariously live through their kid, and like, yeah, like they told like their little 3-year-old boy, yeah, you go girl, like you can become like you can twerk, and like that's how they get off, I guess, in some sick way, because they don't have any purpose, they don't have a man, they don't have like they're like, it's like a broken home, so that's the way that they express their loneliness.
The banning the porn thing, like I understand it. I can't be on board, but I do understand people's why they would, because when I think about like how easy it is to like access porn, like if you just borrow your dad's phone for a minute, just Google tits or something, and boom, porn. Like it's so easy. Like when I was,
it shouldn't be so accessible. I think not ban it, but like it shouldn't be so easy to like find for these kids.
Yeah, like when I was a kid.
The problem is,
but I'm saying, like when I was a kid, like if I found porn, it was like, you know, like I found it behind a bush. It was like a rare occasion. I didn't just, you know, search it on something. You know, it was, you had to work at it, I guess you could say.
I had a my real dad lived in apartments near where I lived in the summer. I'd go over there and he would leave and go shoot pool all night. So I was this like 12-year-old bachelor kid in his apartment with Cinemax. But he had I just think this is a funny story. He had a stack of Playboys and Penthouses. So I'm like 12, and I'm like looking for the Solo Flex ad. I'm like, I don't care. I don't. Yay. But the only issue I have with, like, I think there's a legitimate argument to kind of we got to figure out something that works by way of restriction. But and I imagine that you'd probably be on board with this, Kiki, if you know, as a libertarian. It's like, but who do you give the power? Who's capable of putting restrictions? It's like the government. It's kind of worries me more. It's like, is the cure worse, than the disease. I don't know what the answer is. But.
Yeah.
I think it's more up to the parent to kind of monitor what the kids are doing. Kind of need spyware on the computers, look at everything that they're doing. I really hate to say that, but having kids of my own and seeing the things that slip in on YouTube, like YouTube Kids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy for them to access things.
Yeah.
And you have to helicopter over them.
Yeah, but it's not even that. It's like it's even like kids programming is getting like creepy. Like I don't know if you guys saw that thing of the robots, Transformers. There was some clip that someone pulled from like a Netflix Transformers show, and it's like just random little like just some SJW just had to put it in the thing, but it's like a girl holds up her book, her book to like shield something, and there's like a they them thing, a pin, and like the robot's like, what's that? And it's like this little monologue of, oh, I'm transgender, my friends are gender fluid, and blah blah blah, and the robot's like, oh, that is good, I think that is great, kind of shit. And it's like, why does that need to be in kids programming for the first
there's a Netflix show with a non-binary buffalo.
Oh right, yeah. Did you actually watch that, or like just saw the? I've only seen the clip.
We watched it like a minute of it, and then
really?
Yeah,
like it's so.
This is probably a good period, like over the next few years, kind of a test of certain libertarian principles. It's like, because I kind of think the market seems to be starting to correct this. Like maybe that will be enough. Like maybe when they start hemorrhaging money from making the shows that parents don't want their kids to watch, or even adults don't want to watch all of the woke stuff all of the time, eventually, and it seems to be starting, I don't know if that's your sense, it seems like they're kind of getting the picture. They've been firing like a lot of the more extremes, it seems like, and the movies that aren't woke are making a shitload more money.
Yeah.
So that you'd think that's going to trickle down into like TV and everything else. I hope.
I mean, I hope too. And I got word that the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 wasn't woke, so that's good. So you want to watch it now? So it's hard to say, because I like when you think of what's this shit called? ESG, is it?
Yeah.
Like I think
environmental, whatever, governance.
Yeah, like I think a lot of like the production companies, I think they're still gonna just, I think a lot of them are gonna just go down that woke rabbit hole when they're gonna be kind of guaranteed income from like the government anyway through ESG type of shit.
Interesting.
But I mean that does open the door for like a lot of independent creators to like be different and make content. So I don't know, the creative world, how that's going to be within the next couple of years is going to be interesting.
It's
How
better.
I hope there's going to be,
because if the mainstream's this bad, I feel like it's creating all these wacky Z kids are doing wacky stuff. It's great.
Yeah, because I'm reminded of like a lot of like weird animation that came out in like the early 90s. Was kind of like this response to like, it felt like a response to like the sameness from Disney cartoons. Like everything felt the same, so a lot of people were being weird and making interesting kind of cartoons. That's where you got like Ren and Stimpy and like Courage the Cowardly Dog, that kind of weird, fun animation that came out. So I hope something like that happens in a lot of creative mediums. Like I hope like movies just get weird and fun again. I hope same thing with music. So yeah, I mean, I that's my hope, that like this influences independent creators to like just say fuck it and save money and just put out shit to at least grab the attention of some people, because the corporate entertainment is just gonna get so boring.
Well, it should be boring. It shouldn't be boring and horrible at the same time,
Like, I mean, you know, when I was a kid, like, there was mainstream stuff once in a while that was really good. Like, my favorite show ever is The Simpsons, classic Simpsons, and that was mainstream, but there was still good quality to it. And but now, I don't think that I can't really think of any mainstream anything now that's good. You know?
All the good stuff was made by my generation. So you millennials came in and ruined it with all the woke cartoons.
Yeah.
Teasing.
Because when I went to art school later in life, like in my late 20s, and there was this weird vibe I got from the teachers. Like the idea was that like art isn't meant to be taken seriously unless it has some kind of a message. And even back then I was like, that's gonna just make fucking art entertainment just annoying and boring. Like there's gonna be no fun to be had. And I don't know, I just hope whatever you consider the right to be, like I think they just make fun content. And I think that's the way you win the culture war, just to make fun content. Because I don't think podcasts and stuff like this reaches a very limited audience. Like if you really want to win the world culture war, you have to like reach the middle kind of people that don't follow this stuff. And you know, you have to make a funny TV show or comic or some shit. That's how you get them. Because you know, I don't know. I guess we're gonna kind of wind it down because it's already been oh shit, it's been an hour and 20. Fuck. I guess we'll start winding it down. We'll just go around. If anyone wants to plug anything, Kiki, want to say any last words, Kiki?
Not really. Brain fart. No, not really.
It's okay.
Sorry.
AK, you have any last words on this before we go?
I'll plug my book. Breakthrough Goals. It's available on Amazon and Audible. If you're interested.
All right.
Achieve some goals. That's what happens when you 2020.
And BA, you have anything you want to plug or anything?
No, like hopefully I'll start posting more on this account. Like I haven't been posting. I've been like really busy with work, so
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'll post like some old stuff.
All right.
All
right, and I'll just plug that I'll be vending at an event on the 3rd of June, so be on the lookout for that. I was hoping to have some new merch come in, but I think there's going to be a weird delay, so that's not going to happen, so sucks. Yeah, and, you know, you got to look out for my music show that I've been promising for a few months, but try to get off the ground soon. And, yeah, that's it. I guess thank you guys for watching. Everybody, thanks for being on. Peace.
Yep.